الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد، اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب، اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون. The first of our salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second in honor of Ammar al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third, with your loudest voices, in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. The discussion concerning why the Shia place their hands by their sides in salah or in prayer is one of the most intriguing discussions in Islamic thought, and a discussion which requires a thorough analysis, for it is a discussion which affects the lives of many Muslims in the world today. A discussion from which many lessons may be learned and many important legal examples may be derived, and a discussion with a historical base and a contemporary significance. As we know, prayer occupies a prominent position in all the world religions, and especially within the religion of Islam. Within the religion of Islam, our prayers are seen as being part of the roots of our religion. If a person's prayers are accepted, all their other acts are accepted. And if a person's prayers are rejected, all their other acts are rejected. You therefore find that many recognize that prayer is a spiritual act which seeks to allow the human being to ascend to higher levels in their life. An act which seeks to instill discipline and humility in the life of the human being. That's why many times in the supplications within the school of Ahlul Bayt, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us pray that prayer which raises us as a human being to the highest of levels. As we say in one dua, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min nafs Allah tashba' wa min qalb Allah yakhsha' wa min ilm Allah yanfa' wa min salat Allah turfa'. Ya Allah, I seek refuge from you from a prayer that does not raise me. When I want to approach my prayer every day, I want the prayer to raise me as a human being. Part of how the prayer raises you as a human being is by you recognizing the legal intricacies involved in the prayer. As in any act of worship has its laws. These laws may be very clear and some of them may not be. But there is a need for a person to understand the intricacies behind the laws for any act of worship. Otherwise, the full benefit of that act of worship cannot be derived unless a person understands each and every law related to the act of worship. As in today, if I went to Hajj, if I went to the pilgrimage in Mecca, and I do not know what the laws are, if I'm in the third round of tawaf or the fourth round of tawaf, and something happens, can I continue? Do I have to start again? I will not gain the full flavor because I'm not understanding the legal intricacies of that act. Likewise, fasting in the holy month of Ramadan, when I come to fast in the holy month of Ramadan, unless I know the laws related to fasting, then the benefits related to the act will not be fully understood or fully reaped. Likewise with salah, many times in the Quran you see a verse about salah beginning aqimus salah, isn't it? So whenever you see a verse in the Quran, it's either aqimus salah or aqimus salah. Many of the scholars say when Allah uses the word aqimu, part of the meaning of aqimu, establish prayer, is make sure that you're established in the laws behind the prayer. Make sure you know each and every law. As it's unfortunate today, sometimes in the school of Ahlul Bayt, when you come towards certain laws of prayer, you see people performing mistakes in their prayers regularly. Unfortunate because the person doesn't intend to perform a mistake. But the reality is, unless a person goes and reads on the background of salah, then they may end up making a mistake on each and every intricate part of salah. As in when our Holy Prophet prayed in front of the Sahaba, he wanted them to focus on each part of the salah, because each part had a physical and a spiritual benefit. When Rasulullah would say, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli, pray as you saw me pray, what was he trying to say? He was trying to say that every aspect of the way I pray has a benefit for you as a human being. Do not leave an aspect thinking this is a small part I don't need to know about. Every aspect of salah, every legal intricacy needs to be understood. And that's why you find when you come to the issue of how we stand in salah, it's a fundamental legal discussion. Why? Because many times as Shia, people say to us, why do you Shia stand with your hand by your side? As in every Muslim, they say, stands with their hands folded across their chest, for example, or below their navel. Yet the Shia, when they stand with their hands by their side. You find a person comes up to you and says, why are you standing with your hand by your side? Rasulullah says, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Rasulullah used to stand, he used to fold his hands, and therefore that's the way that you have to pray. And some people who are more unfortunate may actually one day be standing in a mosque and someone comes and takes their hand and folds it. As in there are some of you here who I'm sure have seen that you may pray in Mecca or Medina today, and you may actually have someone who will come and take your hands and fold it for you. At that moment you're thinking to yourself, excuse me, I said, let me finish my salah, and then we will sit and discuss this area. Many Shia therefore ask the question that are we right when we pray by our sides? As at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the main thing He wants from us is for us to pray. How many times you hear in our communities people say, whether you pray like this, you pray like this, you pray like this, the main thing is, alhamdulillah, you are praying. We reply by saying, Rasulullah, with something as important as salah, would not give us 6 different ways of praying in salah. Rasulullah, surely, with respect to every school in Islam, surely Rasulullah would come with one way of praying, as in now today if I came to this mosque, and on a Monday I said to everyone, pray as you see me pray. Everyone says, no problem. On the Tuesday I pray like this, on Wednesday I pray like this, on the Thursday I pray like this. You think 30 years later, everyone's going to remember the way I pray? You're going to have so many different varieties of prayer. Surely there would have been, when Rasulullah came, Rasulullah would not have swapped a different salah every day. Surely Rasulullah would have made it easy, as in this religion always says, we have come to bring you ease and not hardship. Surely the Prophet would have come with one way to pray. Today when you go to Mecca, the period of Hajj, you see someone praying with their hands here. And you see someone praying with their hands here. And you see someone praying with their hands here. And you wonder, if a non-Muslim saw us praying, they would think to themselves, Muhammad couldn't even teach his people how to pray properly. As in their people can't even pray. When you tell a fellow Muslim, surely there must have been one way of praying, they reply to you, no, brother. At the end of the day, our differences are a blessing. The main thing is you pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore tonight, let us dissect the origin of the belief on praying on the hands by the side and the hands which are folded, in order that we're able to clarify a few misconceptions. And we need to use some of the most important works when dissecting this issue. I want to dissect this in a number of stages. Number 1, when it came to the Imams of fiqh who we have in the world today, what was their great period of knowledge and how does Islam need such a resurgence? Number two, these four Imams of fiqh, what is their opinion as to how Rasulullah used to pray? Number three, how important is Malik's opinion when it comes to the issue of what? The issue of sadl. And how different is the issue of sadl, of the hands, in relation to the qabd of the hands? Number four, and of the utmost importance, which famous companions, tabi'een and tabi'een, believed that Rasulullah used to pray with his hands by his side? Number five, what is the opinion of Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq as to the one who folds their hand in salah? And what do the books like Man La Yahdarahu al-Faqih and the Tahdhib and Wasa'il al-Shia say about the issue of folding of the hands, and what do they name it in the books of hadith? Let's dissect this and dissect this topic in complete depth. When we come to the main Imams of fiqh, the main Imams of law in the Muslim world today, we find that there are four who are normally named. They are Imam Abu Hanifa, and Imam Malik, and Imam al-Shafi'i, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. These four Imams were in a part or a period of knowledge where many of the greatest scholars of Islamic history lived alongside each other, as in they were living in the time of the latter part of the 1st century and then moving into the 2nd century. You find that these scholars were scholars who were living in the greatest of periods of knowledge, as in if you went to Medina, you'd see Malik ibn Anas teaching the religion of Islam. If you went to Kufa, you'd see Imam Abu Hanifa teaching the religion of Islam. If you went to all parts of the Muslim world, Medina, Kufa, Egypt, you went to the different areas, you would see Islam being taught. You would see that this period was the crystallization of the understanding of the knowledge that Rasulullah left behind for us, as in Rasulullah had died about 70, 80 years before these people were alive. If we say Imam Abu Hanifa was born, let's say, in the latter part of the 1st century, Rasulullah died about 70, 80 years earlier. These scholars, many of them were sitting discussing different issues. You found that that period, many renowned scholars of Ahlul Sunnah would conduct classes for their students. You found teachers like Imam al-Awza'i, Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, you would find Hassan al-Basri, you would find Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. All of them would conduct classes with which aim? With the aim to try and find the sunnah of Rasulullah, isn't it? As in when they would conduct a class on law, the aim was to see which of the hadiths of Rasulullah are hadiths which are verifiable and are applicable. You found that these scholars, many of them were open to discussions with each other, as in you didn't find this sense of sectarian tension between them. On the contrary, you would find that many of them would sit in their classes, benefit from their teachers, learn from their teachers, then disseminate that knowledge. And that's why you found when people asked Islam as a religion, when was its structure codified? In reality, the theological and the legal structure of the religion of Islam was codified, I would say, 100 to 200 years after Rasulullah died. You would find in the time of Abu Hanifa and the time of Malik, there would be discussions concerning, for example, predestination versus free will. Does Allah control all our actions, or do we have free will? There would be discussions about, does God have a body or no? There would be discussions about a person, if he is a sinner, does he go to hell, or does it depend on what Allah believes on him? There were discussions about the suspension on the judgments of companions who may have been not the best ethically, but their hearts may have been different. In other words, that period was a period where Muslims were sitting learning with each other. Imam al-Sadiq in that period, if he heard an opinion of Malik, he would say, هذا رأي أهل المدينة. If he heard the opinion of Abu Hanifa, he would say, هذا رأي أهل الكوفة. And those schools survived until today. Someone asks a question. Those schools, Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanbali, did the Imams of those schools form the schools? Or were they formed later? As in Imam Abu Hanifa, Did he intend to form the Hanafi school? Imam Malik, did he intend to form the Maliki school? Imam al-Shafi'i, did he intend to form the Shafi'i school? Because you know today in the world, 31% of the Muslim world follows Imam Abu Hanifa in fiqh. And 25% or 23% follows Imam Malik. And 25% follows, for example, Imam al-Sadiq. Therefore, you have these people, their schools remain alive until today. Abu Hanifa in India and Pakistan, you have a huge Hanafi school. Imam Malik, Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, many Malikis. Imam al-Shafi'i, Egypt, known for following Imam al-Shafi'i. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, if you go to Saudi Arabia today, major following of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal or certain parts. These Imams, did they intend to formulate the school? No, they didn't. These Imams left behind pieces of literature. Their students and the students of their students and the students of their students would later be part of protecting the heritage of these Imams. So for example, Abu Hanifa, Karhi for example, amongst the scholars, was of those who looked after the teachings of Abu Hanifa. Malik, the people of Africa, were the ones who kept the teachings of Malik continuing. Imam al-Shafi'i, one may argue Ibn Suraj looked after much of the teachings of Imam al-Shafi'i. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, Abu Bakr al-Khalal in reality is the one who looked after Ahmad bin Hanbal's teachings. Therefore you found that particular environment, that particular energy at that time, where students and teachers could sit with each other, is what Islam wanted to rebuild in the 20th century. Ayatollah Borojordi, may Allah bless his soul, and Sheikh Mahmoud Shaltut in Egypt, the head of Al-Azhar, they tried to bring this whole idea of the schools coming together. 12 years the ulama sat together from 1947 till 1959 to sit together and discuss like Imam Malik and Abu Hanifa and Imam al-Sadiq sat. They wanted to rebuild this. They didn't want there to be Shia and Sunnah not sitting and discussing literature. All the literature we have until today, it's a shame that the schools didn't come together. And that's why at the end Sheikh Mahmoud Shaltut would say that the Ja'fari madhab is the 5th madhab in the religion of Islam. Why? Because there was dialogue which was intra-faith. Today many people talk about interfaith, whereas intra-faith is just as important. When you come to an issue like Salah, an issue like Salah has to be understood with the opinions of other Muslims. As in until today, Imam Malik, his book Al-Muwatta is with us until today. The Mudawwana is with us until today. Imam al-Shafi'i's books are with us until today. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, his book, the Musnad, is with us until today. As Muslims, we have to sit together with our books of law and with the books of law of other Muslims in order to see what are the similarities and the differences. You therefore, when you came to the issue of Salah, you looked in the issue of Salah and the issues you would find. Abu Hanifa sometimes may have a difference with Malik on Salah. Malik may have a difference with the Shafi'i on Salah. Al-Shafi'i may have a difference with Ahmad bin Hanbal on Salah. Let me give you an example. In terms of combining Salah, Malik and Al-Shafi'i and Ahmad bin Hanbal, all of them allow Salah to be combined. When you are traveling or when it is raining. Abu Hanifa only allows Salah to be combined at Muzdalifah. That's it. Whereas the other three allow combination of Salah. Imam Malik, Imam al-Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal allow combination in other times. Abu Hanifa says only in Muzdalifah you combine the Salah. For example, on what breaks Salah? You find Abu Hanifa says if a black dog walks across you in Salah, your Salah is void. Whereas the others differ with this opinion. You therefore find that when you come to looking at any issue in Salah, it's vital to look at the opinions of all the schools in Islam. Why is it vital? So that when I as a Shia give my opinion, I am able to say there may be an Imam of Ahlul Sunnah whose opinion is similar to mine. This is an important point. I need to know what Abu Hanifa and Malik and Shafi'i say, so that if someone today comes and tells me, why do you pray with your hands down? I'm able to point to someone of the Imams of Ahlul Sunnah who might agree with me. If I don't study the Imams of Ahlul Sunnah, how will I know if there's a similarity or no? Therefore, on this issue of putting the hands by the side, Putting the hands by the side, in fiqh, they call it sad. And on the issue of putting the hands together, they call it qab. So when you look in the books of fiqh of Ahl Sunnah, I mention Ahl Sunnah because I'm going to come to the meaning of qab in tashayyu. In Ahl Sunnah you say sad is the putting of the hands down. Qab is putting the hands together. Let's see what the opinions are of the different schools of Ahl Sunnah when it comes to where you place the hands in Salah. When it comes to Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik say you place the hands below the navel. So when it comes to Salah, if you want to know if someone is a Hanafi, if you're standing in Pakistan, for example, or you're in Maghrib or Tunis, you will find, for example, or if you're looking, at the school of Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, what do they say? Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal say you place the hands below the navel. Imam al-Shafi'i says no, you place it closer to the chest. Imam al-Shafi'i has an interesting explanation as to why he says you place it closer to the chest. Of course, in the opinion of all three of them, in their opinion, this is what Rasulullah used to do. As in all three of their opinion, they say that this is what Rasulullah used to do. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal and Imam Abu Hanifa say Rasulullah used to place his hands below the navel area. Imam al-Shafi'i says Rasulullah used to place his hands closer to the chest. And the reason is so that the light of Iman does not leave the heart of the human being, you cover the chest area. It's interesting, as at the end of the day, even if a person differs with this, he says you may have the light of Iman in your chest, and you don't want it to leave. So Imam al-Shafi'i says cover that area in order that the light of Iman does not leave your heart. He says, as for those, look at Imam al-Shafi'i, how he differs with Ahmad bin Hanbal and Abu Hanifa. He says, as for those who lower their hands below the navel, that is pointing towards an area which is not recommended. That is too low. Whereas if you place it just below the chest, then you look after the light of Iman below the chest. In other words, Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal differ with Imam al-Shafi'i. Although you will see Ahlul Sunnah, many of them in the mosques, folding their hands, two of the schools will fold their hands low. A third of the school will fold the hand high. This is an indicator that there's still uncertainty about the folding, isn't it? As in, if it was clear that Rasulullah, if it was clear about the folding, all Ahlul Sunnah would come forward and fold in exactly the same place. Whereas Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal below, Imam al-Shafi'i above. You therefore found that three of the Imams of Ahlul Sunnah say what? That qab takes place. However, the fourth of the Imams of Ahlul Sunnah is adamant on his opinion that Rasulullah prayed with his hands by his side. Who is that? Imam Malik ibn Anas. Now this is a fundamental point to understand, because they call this the debate between living tradition and Sahih tradition. This is an important debate. Living versus Sahih tradition. I want you to remember this. Imam Malik was born around the same time as Imam Salih, and he was born in the 93rd year or 91st year after Hijrah. Imam Salih was born in the 80th year after Hijrah. So there's about 10 years of difference between them. And many believe Imam Malik's book, Al-Muwatta. Al-Muwatta means in English, the approved. Al-Muwatta. Imam Malik, many believe, including Imam al-Shafi'i, that the greatest book after the Quran is the Muwatta of Malik. And that's the opinion of Imam al-Shafi'i. He says the soundest book when it comes to the collection of hadith after the Quran, in terms of the legal hadith, is that of Imam Malik. Imam Malik originally comes from a family that used to live in Yemen. Then they came towards the religion of Islam in the time of Rasulullah, and they resided and lived in Medina. They continued to live in Medina. His uncle was a scholar, the whole family were known scholars. He was a person who from a young age was known for his ability to learn, his ability to memorize. Not just his ability to learn and memorize, his spirituality was renowned. Imam Malik is placed alongside people like Uwais al-Qarani, Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Ghazali, Abdul Qadir al-Gailani, for their spirituality as well. Because Imam Malik was known for two things in Medina, and his relationship with Medina is vital in this discussion. Why? He was known for two things in Medina, Imam Malik. The first is that he'd walk around Medina barefooted out of respect for the earth of Medina. He wouldn't walk with a shoe in Medina. He would walk barefooted. He says, I have this much respect for the earth of Medina that I walk barefooted. Secondly, Imam Malik used to kiss all the buildings in Medina when he would walk. Because he would say, imagine, only 90, 100 years ago, Rasulullah touched this building. It's a very beautiful point. That Imam Malik in Medina, if he sees any building, he'd come and kiss it. And he would say, imagine Rasulullah's hand touched this building, or his body touched this building. I said to him, oh Imam Malik, come to Medina today and see which of the buildings remain of Rasulullah. See which of the heritage remains of Rasulullah. His house has been turned into a hotel, and his library has been turned into a car park. And it's a shame. It's a shame, the destruction of the heritage in Medina. Imam Malik used to walk around Medina, he would kiss the buildings. Because he would say, these are the buildings where Rasulullah used to walk, where Rasulullah used to teach. This Imam Malik, he compiled two famous works. One work was the Muwatta. The Muwatta was compiled on behalf of Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, the Khalifa, known as al-Mansur al-Dawaniqi, had asked Imam Malik to compile the Muwatta because there were inconsistencies in the opinions of the people of Iraq. So Malik came together and he compiled the Muwatta. And in the Muwatta, you will find there are 12 hadiths or so from Imam al-Sadiq. Within the Muwatta, you have hadiths from Imam al-Sadiq amongst others. Another of his famous books was called the Mudawwana. The Mudawwana was another of his works where he looks at certain legal issues in relation to prayer. Imam Malik, therefore, what was his particular conception of how you understand the particular tradition? He said, I go by the actions of the people of Medina. What do we mean? Imam Malik said, I'm living in Medina. There are people here living with me whose fathers may have met Rasulullah, isn't it? As in, if Imam Malik is living 100 years after Rasulullah, there may be people living in Medina who may have had fathers who met Rasulullah. Rasulullah, where did he die? Medina, isn't it? Where were most of his companions? Medina. Therefore, Imam Malik said, the living tradition of Rasulullah remains in Medina. When I therefore come to a conclusion about an act of worship, why don't I ask the people of Medina who met Rasulullah? Or the people of Medina who knew someone who knew Rasulullah? That's what is known as living tradition. Imam al-Shafi'i later would come with a discussion on Sahih tradition. Not so much about the living tradition of Medina, but rather by looking at verifying the chain of narrators of a particular hadith and seeing if it's Sahih or no. Malik, however, looked at the living tradition. To Malik, what was important? That I look at the actions of the people of Medina. If the people of Medina pray with their hands by their side, that means that Rasulullah prayed with his hands by his side. Therefore, what do you find? You find Imam Malik, the way he reached the conclusion about Rasulullah praying by his side, this was one of the components. That he said what? That he came forward and he said that the people of Medina until today pray with their hands by their side. Therefore, I am of the belief that Rasulullah prayed with his hands by his side. Hence, Malikis today in Maghrib, in Tunis, in Libya, in that area, what do you find in Jazair, Algeria? You find that they pray with their hands by their side. Therefore, they say, Imam Malik said, Rasulullah's living tradition remained alive in Medina. That's why we keep that tradition alive. You find some people came and said, what? They said a number of arguments against this. Some said, for example, Malik in the Muwatta narrates that Rasulullah had the arms folded. We reply by saying, you're narrating a hadith from the Muwatta, but go to the Mudawwana. In the Mudawwana of Malik, Malik clearly narrates that Rasulullah, he is of the belief that Rasulullah prayed with his hands down in what is known as sad. And that Malik says in Salah, you have to pray with your hands down in Salah, which is wajib. He says, however, in the Nawafil, you may bring your hands together. But in the wajib Salah, you have to put your hands by the side. And that's a famous opinion of Malik, as in if you read the Mukhtasar of Khalil and the commentary on it by Imam al-Dasuqi, you will see very clearly it's written that what? It's very clearly written that Malik's mashhur opinion is that of sad, not of qab. Even I remember someone coming and saying that Malik ibn Anas, the only reason he put his hands by his side was because the governor of Ja'far of Mansur in Medina beat Malik's hand so much that Malik, because he was injured, he prayed with his hands by his side. Honestly, there are some people who come and say because Malik was beaten so much that his hands were so injured, okay, your hands are going to remain injured for how long? Say your hands remain injured. For how long? 2-3 days later, you can go back to praying like this, can't you? So what, Imam Malik for the next 20 years, his hands remain injured? As in those people who came and bring this argument, I said to them, the mashhur opinion of Imam Malik is said, not qab. Imam Malik said the people of Medina pray with their hands down. SubhanAllah, only 100 years after Rasulullah died, he's looking at the people of Medina who were living with Rasulullah, whose fathers prayed Jama'ah with Rasulullah, and they're putting their hands down. Imam Malik, therefore, what was his opinion? His mashhur opinion was clear. He said, on the first level, Rasulullah prayed with his hands down and did not pray with qab. Further than this, and of the utmost importance, you find other scholars of Ahlul Sunnah who actually back up Malik's opinion. That Malik ibn Anas was right when he said that Rasulullah prayed with his hands down. Let me explain to you, for example, who? You have, for example, Shawkani in Nail al-Awtar. Shawkani narrates in Nail al-Awtar, he says that Ibn Mundhir, the teacher of Imam al-Bukhari, he says that Ibn Mundhir says there is no unanimous proof that Rasulullah prayed with his hands folded. No one can come and say unanimously that Rasulullah prayed with his hands folded. That's number one. Number two, Malik used to say, sad is a natural standing position, not qab. When I come and meet someone now, says to me, Salamu alaikum, said Ammar, I don't see them meeting me like this. They're standing like this in front of me, aren't they? Then they put forward their hands and they shake their hands. He says, sad is the natural position. And that's why he quotes from Abu Qatada. Abu Qatada, he quotes from the hadith. You find this hadith, Ibn Rushd narrates it in Bidayat al-Mujtahid. That Abu Qatada, what does he say? Abu Qatada says Rasulullah would do takbir and then rest his hands in the natural position. If I were to ask you, when someone does takbir and rests his hand in that which is natural, what is that which is natural? Put your hands down. It's not natural for someone to do takbir and then go like this. The natural position, Abu Qatada says, is what? Is that Rasulullah would put his hands down. And that's why in the Musnad of Ahmad bin Hanbal, there's a hadith from Jabir bin Samurah where Rasulullah says he sees some companions who are folding their hands. He says to them, why are you folding your hands like the tail of a horse? Put your hands by your side. This is in the Musnad of Ahmad bin Hanbal. Jabir bin Samurah says, Rasulullah says, that companions fold their hands. He said, why are you folding your hands? Like what? Like the folding of the tail of the horse. Even Aisha herself makes it clear in Sahih al-Bukhari that at the beginning, alongside Rasulullah, people were praying with their hands by their side. Aisha has a hadith in Bukhari which says, I hate those who put their hands by their side in Salah because it reminds me of the way the Jews pray. No problem. You hate, you don't hate. The main thing for me is what? The main thing is that in the time of Rasulullah, what do we find? In the time of Rasulullah, Rasulullah is telling his companions, don't fold your hands. Aisha says there are people who are putting their hands by their side and she hates it because it reminds her of the way the Jews pray with their hands by their side. Further than that, Sahal ibn Sa'ad al-Sa'idi, the companion of Rasulullah, Sahal ibn Sa'ad who met Imam Zayn al-Abidin in Sham after Karbala. Sahal ibn Sa'd al-Sa'di himself narrates. He says, we were ordered to fold our hands. When he says we were ordered, what does it mean? It means that we were used to praying with our hands by our side, but we were then ordered, meaning someone forced us to pray with our hands together. Otherwise, the way we used to pray with Rasulullah was what? Was with our hands by the side. If you go to Ibn Abd al-Barr in the Tamheed, and who else? Abd al-Razzaq in the Musannaf, both of them make it clear that in the time of Rasulullah, the preferable opinion was said. Qab, they say, because there is uncertainty about Qab, and also because of this uncertainty, it goes to show that you cannot come forward and say Rasulullah definitely folded his hands. One of them says near the chest, the other says below the navel, and they don't even say it as wujub. They say it's recommended to fold your hands. When a person says it's recommended, it means he himself is not sure if Rasulullah prayed with his hands folded, isn't it? As in, if a school says it's wajib to pray with your hands by your side, that means the imam of that school knows Rasulullah prayed with his hands by his side. Whereas when a school says it's recommended, it means we're not sure. Maybe he prayed with his hands folded or maybe not. And that's why you found Ibn Abd al-Barr in the Tamheed. You know what he says? He says the following Sahaba, the following Tabi'een, all of them prayed with their hands by their side. Who? He says, for example, Hassan al-Basri prayed with his hands by his side. Ibrahim al-Nakha'i prayed with his hands by his side. Ibn Sirin prayed with his hands by his side. You find Ibn al-Zubair prayed with his hands by his side. And then he then narrates an important incident. He narrates that Sa'id ibn Jubair, the great companion of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Sa'id ibn Jubair, that companion who was killed by Hajjaj bin Yusuf al-Thaqafi, Sa'id ibn Jubair, he is narrated to have done what? Sa'id ibn Jubair is narrated that one day he sees, while he's doing tawaf of the Kaaba, Sa'id ibn Jubair, it's narrated, sees someone praying with his hands folded. Sa'id leaves the tawaf of the Kaaba, goes to the person, straightens his hand in salah, and goes back to do his tawaf. This hadith indicates what? Sa'id ibn Jubair is one of the Tabi'een, one of the companions who are of the generation after the companions. Sa'id ibn Jubair would not make a person put his hands down straight unless Sa'id ibn Jubair knew that this idea of putting your hands together is not part of the sunnah of Rasulullah. Therefore you found within the books of Ahl Sunnah, it was clear that when people like Hassan al-Basri, Ibn Sirin, Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, all of them prayed with their hands by their side. You found when Malik's opinion was therefore given, Malik based it on the fact that the Tabi'een like Sa'id, like Ibrahim, like all of them, because they prayed with their hands by their side, Malik said, therefore, this is the living tradition of the people of Medina. And that's why today if someone comes to you and says to you, hey Shia, why are you praying with your hands by your side? Reply by saying, okay, I'm not a Shia, I'm a Maliki. Does that make you happy? As in subhanallah today, wallah, if I'm in a mosque, if someone comes to me, Shi'i, Rafidi, why are you praying with your hands down? Imagine if I turn around to him and say, I'm not a Shia, I'm a Maliki. MashaAllah, brother, keep praying, inshallah. Isn't it? As in, Malik, it's okay. When Imam Malik says pray with your hands down, and everyone knows it's his mashhur opinion, no problem. When a Shi'i prays with his hands down, Rafidi, why is he praying with his hands down? What's the difference? The difference is that I'm taking from the scholars of the religion of Islam, aren't I? Imam Malik, isn't he one of the scholars? Imam Malik, isn't he acting according to the practice of the people of Medina? If Imam Malik is telling us that the Tabi'een used to pray with their hands down, then I take the opinion of Imam Malik. Why? Because Imam Malik is solid in his opinion. He says the hands are down. Imam al-Shafi'i says up here. Imam Abu Hanifa says here. It's not clear for me. Here or here. Imam Malik tells me naturally the position of Sadl is the way forward. And that's why what you find? When you look at Imam Malik is whose student? Imam Malik is the student of Imam al-Sadiq salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa. Do you know many of our brothers in Ahl Sunnah, when you ask them, Imam Malik, who is his teacher? They say to you, Allah, we think his teacher may be Ibn Shahab al-Zuhri, for example, or his teacher may be someone else. You say, ask Imam Malik, who was the greatest faqih in the whole history of Medina? Imam Malik himself would say, Imam al-Sadiq is the greatest faqih. Imam Malik is a student of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. Imam Abu Hanifa is a student of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. Therefore, what do you find? You find when Imam Malik took it on the basis of the people of Medina, he knew there was a teacher in Medina by the name of Ja'far bin Muhammad. And who better to learn about Rasulullah than the great-grandson of Rasulullah, isn't it? Now I want to learn, for example, I want to learn about the practice of your great-grandfather. Do I go to someone who never knew your family? Or do I go to who? Do I go to you, who are from the family? From the family, surely the family would inherit what the grandfather practices. Imam al-Sadiq's grandfather is Imam Zayn al-Abidin. Imam Zayn al-Abidin's grandfather is Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen is the student of Rasulullah. Therefore, who better to teach me about how to pray than Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam? And I give credit to Imam Malik. Imam Malik, at least, he gives 12 hadiths to Imam al-Sadiq in the Muwatta. Imam al-Bukhari, not one hadith of Imam al-Sadiq. Imam Malik, 12 hadiths. What is 12? Imam al-Bukhari, not one hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. The whole of Sahih al-Bukhari, there's not one hadith from Ja'far al-Sadiq. And there are hadiths from people, wallah, I don't want to mention them on the minbar. Whereas Imam Malik narrates from Imam al-Sadiq, because they recognize in fiqh there is no one as superior as Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. And that's the sad travesty about this religion. That today, when they want to learn about how do you pray, I say to all the brothers, why are you going somewhere when Ja'far al-Sadiq prays with his hands down? Why don't you learn from Ja'far al-Sadiq? Why don't you learn from Imam al-Baqir? Imam al-Baqir, Imam al-Sadiq, when they pray with their hands down, isn't that enough proof for you that Rasulullah prayed with his hands down? As in, if you put all the semantics of debate aside, if Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq prayed with their hands down, then why am I going to learn about how Rasulullah prayed when these two prayed with their hands down? And that's why the question arises, what was the Shia opinion about how we pray? You find, if you look in Man La Yahdarahu al-Faqih of Shaykh al-Saduq, if you look in the section of Salah, or that which invalidates Salah, and you look in Wasa'il al-Shia, and you look at Kitab al-Tahdhib, for example, of Shaykh al-Qusi, look within there, what do we call the folding of the hands? Our brothers in Ahlul Sunnah call it qabd, yes? We call it takfir. I said, what do you mean? The Imams of Ahlul Bayt are asked, if a person places one hand over the other, the right hand over the left, in Salah, what is this? What is your opinion on it? They say the Salah is invalidated. And what? Not just the Salah is invalidated, but that this is the act of the Zoroastrians, the Najus. It's a vital point. That it's as if Imam al-Sadiq and Imam al-Baqir are pointing to the fact that this holding of the hands is an introduction from outside of Islam. That it's as if Muslims saw the Zoroastrians when they worshipped, they put their hands together. When the Muslims saw this, you found that some of them said this is something which is humble, and that this should be included in the prayer. Some people try and come and say that there was a particular Khalifa who introduced this. I haven't found reliable evidence of that. I've searched in the books. I haven't found reliable evidence of any introduction by anyone. What we have found is in the Faqih. There's a clear section which says that this is called takfir, and that this particular issue of folding of the hands invalidates the Salah. Some Shia will come and say, for example, am I allowed to go to a mosque of our brothers and pray like them? Well, if you're in an environment where you're going to be shocked, even then you could say, in taqiyya, even then a person can say, I'm a Maliki. Isn't it? In taqiyya, because someone's about to come and kill you, you could turn around and say, brother, I follow Malik ibn Anas. MashaAllah, Malik ibn Anas, Imam Malik. Subhanallah, go ahead and pray. Because if you say Imam al-Sadiq, you deserve to be killed. But if you say Imam Malik, no, you don't deserve to be killed, because you're a good human. The follower Imam al-Sadiq deserves to be killed. Sad state of Muslim. That the teacher is not warranted, not even known, but the student is known by everybody. But Imam al-Sadiq and Imam al-Baqir clearly say that if a person folds their hands in what? If a person folds their hands in Salah, that Salah is invalidated. Someone turns around and says, does that mean our brothers in Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, all their Salah is invalidated? No. Our brothers in Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, it depends on what knowledge they have. If our brothers in Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah have read their books and that's the conclusion they've reached, then that is between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If someone comes to ask us for our opinion, yes, our opinion, salah is invalidated when you fold your hands. A Shi'i cannot fold their hands in salah. The folding, which is known as takfir, Imam al-Baqir said, is the practice of the Zoroastrians. It's not the practice of the Muslim, it's the practice of the kafir. And the kafir only prays with his hands in that way. But do we say that our brothers in Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, their salah is invalid? No, our brothers in Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah sincerely, they are trying to follow Imam Abu Hanifa, or Imam Malik, or Imam al-Shafi'i, or Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. They are trying to reach the Sunnah of Rasulullah. In their opinion, they have sahih traditions that Rasulullah prayed like this. Whereas in our opinion, like Imam Malik, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam clearly shows what? Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam clearly shows that Ahlul Bayt used to pray with their hands by their side. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us with Muhammad and al-Muhammad, to allow us to be amongst the companions of Imam Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman, allow us to be amongst those who follow him in this world and the hereafter. Raise us with the Imam of our time and unite the Muslim Ummah on the love of Muhammad and al-Muhammad. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with Surah Al-Fatiha, but before it, the loudest of your salah. Concerning why the Shia place their hands by their sides in salah or in prayer is one of the most intriguing discussions in Islamic thought, and a discussion which requires a thorough analysis, for it is a discussion which affects the lives of many Muslims in the world today. A discussion from which many lessons may be learned and many important legal examples may be derived, and a discussion with a historical base and a contemporary significance. As we know, prayer occupies a prominent position in all the world religions, and especially within the religion of Islam. Within the religion of Islam, our prayers are seen as being part of the roots of our religion. If a person's prayers are accepted, all their other acts are accepted. And if a person's prayers are rejected, all their other acts are rejected. You therefore find that many recognize that prayer is a spiritual act which seeks to allow the human being to ascend to higher levels in their life. An act which seeks to instill discipline and humility in the life of the human being. That's why many times in the supplications within the school of Ahlul Bayt, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us pray that prayer which raises us as a human being to the highest of levels. As we say in one dua, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min nafsillah tashba' wa min qalbillah yakhsha' wa min ilmillah yanfa' wa min salatillah turfa'. Ya Allah, I seek refuge from you from a prayer that does not raise me. When I want to approach my prayer every day, I want Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون. The first of our salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The second in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. The third with your loudest voices in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asri wal-Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. The discussion, your hands and fold it for you. At that moment you're thinking to yourself, excuse me, I said, let me finish my salah, and then we will sit and discuss this area. Many Shia therefore ask the question that are we right when we pray by our sides? As at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the main thing He wants from us is for us to pray. How many times you hear in our communities people say, whether you pray like this, you pray like this, you pray like this, the main thing is, alhamdulillah, you are praying. We reply by saying, Rasulullah, with something as important as salah, would not give us 6 different ways of praying in salah. Rasulullah, surely, with respect to every school in Islam, surely Rasulullah would come with one way of praying, as in now today if I came to this mosque, and on a Monday I said to everyone, pray as you see me pray. Everyone says, no problem. On the Tuesday I pray like this, on Wednesday I pray like this, on the Thursday I pray like this. You think 30 years later, everyone's going to remember the way I pray? You're going to have so many different varieties of prayer. Surely there would have been, when Rasulullah came, Rasulullah would not have swapped a different salah every day. Surely Rasulullah would have made it easy, as in this religion always says, we have come to bring you ease and not hardship. Surely the Prophet would have come with one way to pray. Today when you go to Mecca, the period of Hajj, you see someone praying with their hands here. And you see someone praying with their hands here. And you see someone praying with their hands here. And you wonder, if a non-Muslim saw us praying, they would think to themselves, Muhammad couldn't even teach his people how to pray properly. As in their people can't even pray. When you tell a fellow Muslim, surely there must have been one way of praying, they reply to you, no brother. At the end of the day, I would regularly. Unfortunate, because the person doesn't intend to perform a mistake. But the reality is, unless a person goes and reads on the background of salah, then they may end up making a mistake on each and every intricate part of salah. As in when our Holy Prophet prayed in front of the Sahaba, he wanted them to focus on each part of the salah, because each part had a physical and a spiritual benefit. When Rasulullah would say, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli, pray as you saw me pray, what was he trying to say? He was trying to say that every aspect of the way I pray has a benefit for you as a human being. Do not leave an aspect thinking this is a small part I don't need to know about. Every aspect of salah, every legal intricacy needs to be understood. And that's why you find when you come to the issue of how we stand in salah, it's a fundamental legal discussion. Why? Because many times as Shia, people say to us, why do you Shia stand with your hand by your side? As in every Muslim, they say, stands with their hands folded across their chest, for example, or below their navel. Yet the Shia, when they stand with their hands by their side. You find a person comes up to you and says, why are you standing with your hand by your side? Rasulullah says, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Rasulullah used to stand, he used to fold his hands, and therefore that's the way that you have to pray. And some people who are more unfortunate may actually one day be standing in a mosque and someone comes and takes their hand and folds it. As in there are some of you here who I'm sure have seen that you may pray in Mecca or Medina today, and you may actually have someone who will come and take you the prayer to raise me as a human being. Part of how the prayer raises you as a human being is by you recognizing the legal intricacies involved in the prayer. As in any act of worship has its laws. These laws may be very clear and some of them may not be. But there is a need for a person to understand the intricacies behind the laws for any act of worship. Otherwise, the full benefit of that act of worship cannot be derived unless a person understands each and every law related to the act of worship. As in today, if I went to Hajj, if I went to the pilgrimage in Mecca, and I do not know what the laws are, if I'm in the 3rd round of Tawaf or the 4th round of Tawaf, and something happens, can I continue? Do I have to start again? I will not gain the full flavor because I'm not understanding the legal intricacies of that act. Likewise, fasting in the holy month of Ramadan. When I come to fast in the holy month of Ramadan, unless I know the laws related to fasting, then the benefits related to the act will not be fully understood or fully reaped. Likewise with salah, many times in the Quran you see a verse about salah beginning Aqimus Salah, isn't it? I said whenever you see a verse in the Quran, it's either Aqimus Salah or Aqimus Salah. Many of the scholars say when Allah uses the word Aqimu, part of the meaning of Aqimu, establish prayer, is make sure that you're established in the laws behind the prayer. Make sure you know each and every law. As it's unfortunate today, sometimes in the school of Ahlul Bayt, when you come towards certain laws of prayer, you see people performing mistakes in their prayers